Welcome to the penultimate episode of Season 10 of the Ubuntu podcast. It's Tuesday the 12th of December, and we're going to discuss what's been happening in the news and community. I'm Martin, and joining me this week are Mark.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm here.
Good. Are you well?
I am well.
Good.
Yes.
And Alan.
What ho? How are you doing?
Very well myself. You?
Yeah, all right. You know,
What have you been up to?
So I have been watching a bit of YouTube's videos.
Oh yeah.
Specifically, I've found myself watching YouTube videos of people playing games that I can't play on Linux. I've noticed it's quite enjoyable to watch. There's a particular person who I've been watching. I for some reason, I don't know how, I managed to get subscribed to Eurogamer, which is, a journalistic publication which publishes news and has video content. And one of the videos I stumbled upon was a guy called Ian Higton playing Player Unlimited's Battlegrounds, which is a game which is only available on Windows at the moment and is coming to Xbox One as we record this, like right now today. But it's not available for Linux, and there's no plans to release it for Linux. And it's frustrating because I want to play it because it looks like a fun game. So I vicariously live the enjoyment of this game through this Ian Higton guy. And, it's quite entertaining, quite good fun. And I find it, he'll stream for 4 hours solid playing this game. And it's he'll play, die, have to restart the game, play a new level, die, or win. Not very often. But the thing that got me was this whole community around people watching him while he's streaming. There's all the people in the chat listening to his, watching his video, and he remembers the names of them and welcomes them back and all that kind of stuff. And it was just a really nice, friendly little community of people watching this guy getting shot in the head by random strangers on the internet. It was quite entertaining.
Mark, what about you? Have you been watching random strangers being shot in the head on the internet?
Strangely not.
Oh.
No. I have been I have been for a walk in Oxford in a parallel universe.
What now?
So there's a series of books by Philip Pullman called His Dark Materials.
Ah, yes, I know these books.
And quite a significant proportion of the stories are set in Oxford, which is near where I live, but it's in a parallel universe, which is in many ways like our own, but in many ways subtly different. And I had a friend of mine come to stay who is also a big fan of these books. So we had a walk around Oxford, exploring some of the places that are mentioned in the books and seeing what's there in real life.
Fantastic.
It was quite fun.
I read that trilogy of stories on my honeymoon.
Speaking of books reading on honeymoon, I read The Code Book by Simon Singh, and everyone thought I was a massive nerd reading that on my honeymoon. So,
Surely not.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad to hear other people read nerdy things as well.
Yes. Well, it's not specifically a nerdy thing. It's just I was doing a nerdy thing with my experience of the book.
What sort of locations are there? Is it like when you say parallel universe? Is it completely different?
Well, no. So
or is it just slightly different?
Yeah, there's things which are like the colleges of Oxford are called slightly different things, and there's significant places which are because part of the book is also set in our universe, and there's significant places in the city which exist in both. And like there's one bit where one of the stories describes a bookshop on the corner, which is actually an Oxfam charity bookshop. But in the alternative universe, it's just a bookshop on the corner, and it's kind of nice to see those little details that, there's a bookshop there as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
It's quite cool. It's I could probably do a lot more if I actually went through and sort of made more notes. But this was just an afternoon's enjoyment.
Should we get on with the news?
Let's do that. And now it's time for our final news segment of the year. So first up in the news, Patreon has shifted its goalposts.
Oh dear.
Yes. So I'm sure podcast fans will be familiar with Patreon. It's a platform that many content creators use for receiving micropayments from from fans and patrons to support their creative works. Lots of YouTubers use it, and podcasters and other content creators online.
Lots of open source developers use it as well now. Yeah.
But Patreon has made a somewhat unpopular move in that they have shifted their model for collecting fees from collecting them from the creator to collecting them from the patrons themselves. So this means that whereas before, if you wanted to support someone to the tune of, say, $1 a month, you would donate $1, and then the content creator would see that $1 minus Patreon's fees.
Right.
If you want to donate $1, you now have to pay $1 plus the fees, and then the creator will see the whole $1.
Yeah.
Right. And some people are saying, well, this is not unreasonable because at the moment it's unfair that the content creators aren't getting like the full value of the donations, whereas with this switching it around, the content creator can have some level of expectation what their income is going to be month to month, because they're not going to have money ripped out of their pocket by Patreon, right? So that was the goal. That was ultimately the goal, is consistency for the content creator, right? Mm.
But I've yet to see a content creator who supported this change, however.
Yes, so have I. I mean, there have been a couple who I have seen who are the kind of people who make videos which are contrary to everyone else's position. I've seen them talk about this as being perfectly fine. Mm-hmm. But I've not seen...
Is that just because that's the kind of content they create?
Yes. Whereas most people I've seen have complained about this because... Not because from their position it's a problem, but because the people who are donating to them often donate small amounts, and it's less predictable and less easy to calculate what you're donating if you're given extra fees on top. And so as a result, many of those content creators, many of those people who are supporting content creators are withdrawing their funding. And so a lot of creators have posted screenshots of this is what it's doing to us, Patreon, and a list of, people who are unsubscribing and the fees and the comments that people are leaving. And pretty much unanimously, the comments they're leaving are, this is Patreon's fault.
Yeah. And the distro that shall not be named uses Patreon as part of its crowdfunding model. And the lifeblood of a successful Patreon campaign is really lots of people who are contributing a small amount, like $1. And these changes means that their dollar contribution is now going up significantly in terms of, what they're prepared to pay. And a lot of these people are backing these projects from around the world where these price hikes are significant for them. So yeah, it's been...
Have you noticed a difference?
Not yet. And I've drafted a post for the patrons of Ubuntu Mate to sort of flesh out my position on this, but I don't really know what it is yet. I mean, we're just going to have to wear it. There is talk that maybe this will change, and instead of these fees being applied to every patron you back, they will eventually get rolled up into a single fee for all of the patrons that you back. But again, that only works if you're backing multiple projects as opposed to one. Mm. So that doesn't look like that's going to be...
But I think they want people to back multiple projects. They want you to be part of the ecosystem, and they want to say, hey, you liked that project, you might like this project, so that you're pumping more money through the system, and they obviously get more of a slice. Because it's not just a fee, there's a percentage as well, isn't it? There's a 35% plus percentage fee.
Exactly.
Is it not possible for someone who wants to back a project to now just say, oh, well, instead of backing by $1, I'll back by, 80 cents?
There's a minimum, and I think the minimum is $1 now.
Right, I see.
There didn't used to be a minimum amount, but I think the minimum is $1.
So it's not just like you can adjust your contribution so that you still pay the same amount and the person you're backing still gets the same amount.
No, someone's going to lose some money somewhere. I know some Patreon campaigns have changed their pricing structures so that they're basically taking the hit in order to preserve the number of patrons that they have.
I see.
I back 15 or 16 projects, I think, and what I'm looking at is just and I back them to well beyond like the basic thing. So typically about $5 a month is what I back each of those projects at. And I'm looking at like reining those back slightly to compensate for the extra cost, because when it multiplies out over lots of projects, it's also quite a jump in expenditure.
And this kicks in soon, doesn't it? Like 15th of December.
And that's the other thing as well. The timing is lousy, right? This month is the month where everybody is, thinking about their money and the cash flow and how things are being spent. So introducing a price structure change in December is really poorly executed, in my opinion.
We'll have to see how this pans out, really.
Mm.
In gooder news, Mozilla have launched their speech-to-text engine and voice training dataset. It's called Deep Speech, which I always thought would be an IBM thing. If it's got deep in the name, it would, but apparently not. It's an open source speech recognition model with about 94% accuracy. So I think this is based on the data that they collected earlier in the year. I think we mentioned it earlier in the year, where you could go to a web page and there would be a phrase on the screen and you just say it into the screen and they record it, and then they use that data to analyze how people talk from different parts of the world, so that they can get their data set more accurate, so that when someone says, open the pod bay doors, Hal, it knows to open the pod bay doors and not flush the toilet or whatever other, function that it might know. So this is great, isn't it? It's an open data set that people could use in their applications.
Well, so it's two parts. It's the model for recognizing speech, and then there's the data set, which is the body of speech which they've collected and had transcribed through community efforts, which other people can use to train voice-activated systems, basically. And these are all openly licensed.
Yeah. And I think the data set's actually really useful, because a lot of the time this sort of thing sits behind APIs and services. And I believe that's going to be a thing, but it also means you can download these data sets and self-host as well if you want to build your own
if you've got
solutions.
12 gig spare to host your...
Yeah, it's not too bad.
I mean, no, it's
especially if you were someone like, I don't know, Mycroft, for example.
Yes, exactly. This is
12 gig on their server.
Yes.
With an open source back end, with the open source front end on the Mycroft devices, just as a hypothetical example, that would get them out of the situation of using proprietary solutions, and they could tout themselves as the fully open speech recognition system.
Yeah. And then you could even host your own back end in your own house.
Yeah. Or if you were a larger organization and you wanted to deploy these within your organization, you could have hosted within your own data center. That's fantastic. So do you know if they have any way to contribute back? Like, because we did the training earlier in the year. Is this data set fixed, or does it dynamically change over time? Does it get better? I would imagine the more people who are using it, there's more data to be trained with. So you could feed that back into the system.
My understanding is that the whole system is English language only, with other languages coming soon. So I expect these data sets will expand as they add to their portfolio of languages.
You can still go to voice.mozilla.org and contribute.
Right. Brilliant. That's great news, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Umauamaua is to be probed. Yeah.
Really?
It's if you haven't heard, Umauamaua is an oddly shaped interstellar asteroid, and it's being observed for artificial signals, apparently, so radio signals. It was detected a couple of months ago, and has sort of spun around the sun and is now rocketing away out of our solar system. And it's being bombarded with signals from radio telescopes to determine if it's actually an asteroid or perhaps an alien spacecraft.
Is there a film coming out soon, or some book or something? Because usually these kind of things, like, NASA say there's water on Mars, and look, the Martian film comes out, or there's a comet going round, and look, there's a new Hollywood film about people who are going to rescue us from this comet that's going to hit us. Is there a film coming out that that this can be tied to?
Not that I'm aware of.
Arthur C. Clarke book called Rendezvous with Rama, which has been likened to this object.
I would imagine that's not a new book, is it?
No, it's not a new book. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that such a book already exists.
It's not been re-released or something, has it?
No.
Okay.
Perhaps they're making a film of it.
There's not going to be anything on there, is there?
No, it's a weird-shaped rock that's going quite fast and therefore must have originated from outside the solar system. So that's quite cool.
I think the value here...
I like how blasé you are about the fact that there's this gigantic rock.
No, I mean, it's awesome. I'm being blasé about the fact that, of course people are going to say it's aliens.
Of course it is.
So this gigantic rock originated from the area of another star, and it's the first time that something like this has sort of come so close to our planet. And
it's the first time it's been detected.
Yes, and the scientific value here is being able to actually analyse a fast-moving object like this.
Nice.
Excellent. And in other weird futuristic sci-fi news, Microsoft's Q-Sharp quantum programming language is now out in preview.
Is it out, but also not out?
It is both out and not out, yes.
Great.
Until you kill your cat.
Okay.
So this is a tool set from Microsoft to allow you to create programs using quantum computing operations. It's pretty hard to understand and therefore pretty hard to explain. You kind of have to already be familiar with quantum mechanical concepts to understand what it is that's going on. And I have a sort of Radio 4 science program listeners understanding.
I like the way you went from Radio 4 science to listener, like not Radio 4 presenter. No. But yes.
Well, I mean, I have the understanding that the presenters impart to us.
Great.
So I'm familiar when I hear them talking about entanglement and teleportation. I understand what they mean, but then hearing them talk about using that to model forces in a hydrogen molecule kind of goes over my head. So this all looks very interesting. It's sort of one thing which they mentioned, which might be familiar to some of our listeners, is that the way it works is kind of like when you're doing programming with like GPU programming. So you'll have a sort of a traditional program on your CPU, and then you'll use the quantum computer like a coprocessor to do the complicated, highly parallelized stuff in a separate process.
Wow. Just like having a Z80 on the tube interface from the past. No,
exactly like that, Alan. Well done.
Yes.
I'm very confused by this whole thing because it says that part of the tool set includes a quantum simulator.
Yes.
And this is where I really doubt whether this is actually quantum programming at all, because quantum computers need to operate at temperatures of around 15 millikelvin, which is 180 times colder than interstellar space. And if you ever see the inside of a quantum computer, the computing bit is almost impossible to see for all of the complex mechanics to actually get the temperatures down so low. So
right, but this is a simulator in the same way
I don't buy it.
Yeah, but in the same way that you can simulate the DNA profile of a gnat or something, very small with a very sufficiently big computer. You can simulate something very, very complicated, just really slowly.
Yes. To give you an example of the scale, you can currently simulate up to 40 qubits, which is the quantum equivalent of 1 bit. And to do that, you need 16 gig of RAM. If you wanted to do 41 qubits, you would need 32 gig of RAM.
So the cynic in me says, I noticed that Microsoft are offering Azure version of the simulator scaling up to 40 qubits. The cynic in me just thinks Microsoft somewhere in their cloud marketing division said, right, what can we do that's really, really big, really massive to sell really huge numbers of really massive Azure systems? And someone went, quantum computers. Done.
Right. Yeah. I'm deeply cynical about that story.
Yes. We shall see how this develops and how it ruins all of our end-to-end encryption in the future.
Not with 40 qubits, it's not.
I can't think of the word qubits without thinking of something from the 15th century. I don't know why.
I thought you were going to say without thinking of Qbert.
No.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, moving on. And now it's time for some community news and events. And the first up in the news is over at Ubuntu.org. There's a blog post about the latest images that have been released for 1804, which obviously doesn't release officially until April next year. The daily ISOs have a new theme, which is it's kind of like a darker theme than usual. What's the name? It's got a funky name.
Breeze Dark.
Breeze Dark, that's the one.
Funky,
yes. And you can switch back to the Breeze Light as well. But they've just made this little announcement to let people know that the Breeze Dark theme is available. It looks quite nice. I quite like that. I've never... I noticed that like a lot of people really, really like the dark themes, and there are some apps that I use on my phone, like Twitter, for example, that I use in dark mode, and Reddit I use in dark mode. But for some reason, I don't do that on the desktop. I'm not quite sure why I do that on the phone, but not on the desktop. And I think I'd probably quite like some more dark themes. So I like more of these.
I use the dark variant of the distro that shall not be named themes on the desktop. I like dark themes. Good for the eyes.
Are they really?
It's not. No, it's not good for your eyes at all.
Okay.
You might think it is because you're used to it, but actually, it's much easier to read. On a screen, it's much easier to read dark text on a light background.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. The text is white background, dark text, but for all of the other paraphernalia, dark. Yeah, the Chrome and everything, all dark, yeah.
Okay. Next up.
Oh, it's me.
It's Martin.
Yes. So we've got a link to a blog post which describes in some detail how you can migrate your LexD instances that were installed on the host using the deb packages to using the LexD snap package.
This sounds very complicated. What's LexD?
So LexD is a container hypervisor, I think we call it. It's a super lean way to spin up containers. So, for example, I sometimes build software, but I want to build software in a clean environment that's not polluted with PPAs and whatever libraries I happen to have on my system. Yes, right. And so I can do Lexi launch Ubuntu 16.04, hit enter, and within a few seconds, I have a brand new machine that I can connect to, effectively SSH into, and then just do whatever I need to do. And I can run commands in that and then quit, and I can either leave it persistent or throw it away. And LexD is like the management interface to that. And previously, it would have been installed via a PPA, but Stefan Graver, who is the lead developer on LexD and Lexi, has made a snap of LexD, and it's been in the store for a long time. And you can just snap install LexD.
Does it not come? Is it not in the main Ubuntu archive?
It might be, but it might be a bit old.
Yeah.
So it's
right. This is how to get the latest version.
Yeah. The real selling point for this is you get the very latest LexD and Lexi from the store. So you just snap install LexD, and then you'll just get new updates over time. And the blog post from Simon, one of the members of the community, I think he lives in Greece, has written a massive blog post all about why you might want to do this and how you migrate from using the deb version of LexD to the snap version of LexD.
Yeah.
Does this mean if you're running containers on the deb version, you can then switch to LexD and then run your containers on the snap version? Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, and not lose what you've got.
Got it.
Yeah. I've used LexD quite extensively in the past, and one of the things that I like about this approach of using snaps is, like we've discussed, the LexD in the archive may be too old for what you need to do, and the PPA is always rolling forward to a newer version, but the snap has tracks, so you can actually subscribe to a particular release version of LexD, so you don't always have to constantly go to the next major version. If you want to build out your whole platform around a known configuration, you can do that, which it's not possible to to do trivially via other mechanisms.
Right. So if you had if there was a breaking change between arbitrary versions between LexD10 and a LexD11, and you want to stick on LexD10, you can still stay on LexD10 and get whatever updates and security patches get put on LexD10.
Yeah.
But someone else might want the bleeding edge LexD11, and both of those are in the store, but separate tracks for different versions.
Yes.
So it's a really nice way to be able to have multiple versions of the same thing in the store at the same time for people who have different requirements. It's quite neat. But yeah, it's a really nice blog post, really, really super comprehensive with loads of examples of how you do this and how you start and stop LexD and, how you make sure you're running the right binary, the one that's from the LexD package or the one that's from the BPA and so on. It's really, really nice, comprehensive post.
Cool. And next up, Clive Johnstone has blogged about his switch from LastPass to Bitwarden.
Never heard of it.
LastPass is a well-established password management solution, which has lots of apps and you sync passwords via their server. And Bitwarden is apparently a similar thing, but it's open source. And you can host your own sync server, and it has the same sort of apps for you to have on your various devices.
I think you can use theirs if you want to. You can use the Bitwarden official servers.
Right.
And you can pay for that service, and there are various tiers for number of users that you want to have on there and whether you want to share stuff between users and all that kind of goodness. I think there's a pricing plan on their homepage, partway down the page somewhere. There it is. Yeah. So free forever for people with just 2 users, 2 connections and unlimited share items. But then it goes up to £1 a month. But for business use, it's £5 a month or £3 a month for the full tilt 2-factor auth with audit logging and all user groups and all that kind of stuff. But the interesting thing is, as you said, there's a free software version that you can run on your own server. So you could synchronize your passwords to your own box that you have control over, which is really cool.
Yes. Yep. And this might be a bit more sort of non-technical family member friendly than something like Pass on the command line.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Given that I was looking at the browser extensions earlier. So obviously Firefox and Chrome are supported, and Microsoft Edge, whatever that is. I've not come across that one before. But also Opera and Vivaldi and even Brave and Tor browser are supported with extensions for the Bitwarden client. Yeah, so fairly comprehensive. And then, of course, apps for Android and iOS. So in terms of a drop-in replacement for LastPass, it's quite compelling, completely open source. And if you're already a paying LastPass customer and maybe you're looking for something else, it's a little bit cheaper, Bitwarden, and also offers some encrypted storage backend as well. So if you want to put some files into an encrypted data store, it supports that as well.
Cool.
That's pretty cool.
I might have to have a play around with this.
Yeah. I'm going to take a look over Christmas, I think. It's definitely
me too.
Interesting. I've been experimenting with NPass, which has open source components but isn't open source, but does allow you to choose what you use as the synchronization server. But this is a bit more flexible, I think, than NPass.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Sweet. And we've got some events over the next few months. First up is Google Code-In, which is running from a couple of weeks ago up until 17th of January 2018. And it's something that we are taking part in Ubuntu. If you're part of the Ubuntu community and there are things you think someone from the age of 13 to 17 could contribute to Ubuntu in some way, then get in touch with myself or Martin and we can create those tasks within Google Code-In. And these are tasks that could take anywhere from 20 minutes, half an hour, all the way up to a couple of days. So they can be quite, comprehensive tasks. But the idea is that students from around the world pick up those tasks, do them, provide feedback when they're done. And that feedback could be screenshots of them doing it, or a document or a report, or it could be a link to GitHub or Launchpad or something like that as proof of their work. And then the mentors who work on the team will review those and approve them. And at the end of the process, they may get rewarded, or the winners might get a trip to Google in Mountain View. It's a really nice way to motivate students from the age of 13 to 17 to contribute to open source.
Yep.
Next up.
Next up, FOSDEM 2018 is on the 3rd and 4th of February in Brussels, Belgium, as ever. It is a free event for thousands of software developers to meet, share ideas and collaborate, and usually drink quite a lot of Belgian beer and Club Mate.
There's a bit of that going on, yeah.
Yeah. And our last event is a little ways out. It's UbuCon Europe 2018. Community member Marcos Costales has announced that it's going to be taking place on the 27th, 28th and 29th of April 2018 in Spain. And UbuCons, if you're not familiar, are a network of events where people get together throughout the Ubuntu project to celebrate Ubuntu and make new friends and give presentations and socialize and what have you. It's really good fun. So the reason we're reading some of these ones out a bit farther out is because we're about to take our season break and we're going to be away for a few months. So we're just letting you know ahead of time of some of these things you might want to consider saving up for or booking your travel for.
Awesome. And that's the end of the community news and events.
We know you've got a Facebook account, so stop sharing cat photos for a moment and like or share our posts so your friends and family can find the Ubuntu podcast.
And that's all for episode 41. We'll be back next week when we'll be making our wrong predictions for 2018 and we will go over your feedback.
We'll also review the ones that we made for 2017, the wrong ones.
Dear. I can't even remember. No,
neither can I. Looking forward to that. So, yeah, and that'll be the last one of the year.
Excellent. Wow.
Phew, 42. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Stop.